that, I want to say that yes, I think I've been very gifted to be in this profession. And as luck should have it, I started my career teaching as a biology PGT in the Kendriya Vidyalaya.
Oh,
And I think I barely served for 3 years when I was when I got married, and I landed up in Chandigarh. And to cut a long story short, I think within 6 months I was the head of a school. So the teaching part of it is very less in terms of what people call it the teaching years. But I think all my life I have taught. There has never been a year in which I can say that I haven't taken a class through my 38 years of head of school. The journey was very interesting. I have been a principal of the Bharti Vidya Bhavan School in Chandigarh, its founder. Then I set up the Aisha Tractor School in Parvanu, its founder. And then served modern school Barakhamba Road, New Delhi for the last 14 years, close to 15 years before I retired. But after retiring, I set up, Dr. Pachauri wanted me to set up the first green school in the country. But that had a very short lifespan. And today, right now, I am director of the Gyan Bharti School in Saket, which is also very similar to the dreams that modern school had, and has a foundations set up by the late M.N. Kapoor. So I think this is really my 40-year journey so far, and I have enjoyed every minute of it, because every year, as a teacher, if you are able to say that I have 40 years experience, I think that's not necessarily the best compliment. That everyone helped me to grow through these 40 years, I think that is a dedication to the children whom we nurture. And I have thanks to every single teacher, young or old, every single child, young or old, who helped me grow and kind of be the person I am, still passionate about education. That's where it is. That's the short and long of it.
No, absolutely. No, so just a quick one on that KV, the starting in KV, which KV was that? Where was that? Which KV?
Jammu. My father was in the defense services, so wherever he was posted is what I accepted. It was in Jammu. Oh. And as luck should have it, I mean, I'm provoked to say this today, that I was roll number 1 of that KV as well. That was a new branch coming up, the KV number 2 in Jammu. And historically, it will have my signature as the first only teacher who joined, and then everyone else joined. And it never had a principal, and I was the senior most person there. Till, of course, at the end of 1 year, I moved out of that place. Yes.
Okay. So the number which you mentioned, that was Jammu. Okay. I thought it was somewhere in the south of the country. Okay. Never mind.
No. In fact, I've never lived in the south except for the last 2 years. Sure. I mean, before I got married, yes.
Where are you from largely? Where are you originally from? Which is your, were you born and brought up?
Originally from Palghat, which is where a tribe of Tambrams belong to. Correct. But I was born and raised in Pune, so all my life I have lived in the north. Okay. All my life. Okay. So I speak 3-4 North Indian languages with pretty ease.
Very nice. My wife was sharing with me before we started this, that why are you speaking with ma'am in Hindi? So while I was speaking, I told her she knows better Hindi than me, possibly. That's the way I see it. So having said this, the number 38 is of relevance. You have a 38 year of working, and yesterday I celebrated my 38th birthday for that matter. So having said this, see how important is your...
You are just born, bacha. Oh, so many happy returns, Gaurav. A little belated though.
Thank you very much. No, so I'm coming to... good we know this, because I was intrigued to know about your upbringing, the sort of life obviously you led as a teacher.
Defense. Basically the defense services. My blood, all Air Force.
Okay.
I owe largely to my greatest teachers, my parents.
Oh, lovely. Fantastic.
They are my greatest teachers, yes.
Good, ma'am. So now, obviously, this is important to know a little about you. And though I do not have any standard format of asking the same question, but in your case, I wanted to ask this question. And so I know a little, and in fact, all of us now know you a little more. It is a wonderful thing to have, first of all. So number 2, ma'am, I know when we were discussing, you remember we were talking about the socio-emotional aspect, which in fact got a little left out during the virtual conclave because we didn't have much of a time. So in fact, today is the best time to really take it up in a very big way, and not to really make a mention what has happened a couple of days ago with a young Bollywood actor for that matter. So though there's a lot of bad memories from there for that matter, but then would you like to throw a little light on, ma'am, how this entire socio-emotional aspect needs to be taken care of, if I may say? Yeah. And
Let's go back for a second to what happened on the 20th of, I think, was it March? No, 20th of April. If we go back to that period and see how life changed for every educator in this country, every child, school-going child, college-going child, and the whole educational scenario in this country, it just locked down. So what lockdown really was trips and tourism, travel, and all other forms of economic life kind of shut down.
correct,
Travel shut down,
correct,
movement shut down, even schools shut down, but learning did
correct.
not. And there was this fantastic response of the schools and school leaders and teachers who came by and said, we will not let education suffer. Now, education suffer and learning suffer. These are completely important things to understand only because when the school scenario of face-to-face is avoided, everybody really is worried about how syllabus will be completed. What is it that we do in school and how is it that we can do the same thing and help our children learn while they're locked down in homes? This is too preliminary, and I think the entire world, all countries, including our own, responded to it very beautifully. It was not without challenges. There were schools with the wherewithal. There were teachers, parents, and homes with the wherewithal. There were challenging situations where people didn't have access to technology, for example, which became the biggest enabler of learning. And so what happened exactly was that schools quickly got into fine-tuning the understanding of Zoom as a meeting platform. It was one of the easiest platforms through which immediately we could connect, and then went on into some of them trained, some of them not trained, went into training of teachers and the schools on the Teams and the Google Suites and the Google Classrooms, the WebEx, name it, and all kinds of training platforms. And quickly, within a week, keeping Zoom parallelly or WhatsApp, all possible media, the way we could connect with children, whether it was WhatsApp, whether it was email, whatever we did, we started connecting, and there was no age group that was left out. Whether it was the kindergarten school, where they felt they needed to do things, or whether it was class 12, where the syllabus completion and readiness for exams, all of that became a priority. Everyone jumped into the fray, and I think the teacher warriors did a fantastic job, and we need to salute them. Notwithstanding the fact that many of them have had severe pay cuts, very sad for that. I mean, I feel sad for that because somewhere if we know that we have bread for our stomach, we need bread for our brains. And the teachers are really stretching themselves given the current conditions in which whether they have to look after their homes, look after their families, share their technology resources in delivering, in receiving, in others working through, because everybody had only this technology to assist them to deliver their life's requirements.
Correct.
Now, so what happens the next stage? The next thing that happens is that we all understand that, I mean, I still completely believe, maybe I'm the old school, that, children need to get back to school if they have to be nurtured and educated in the complete sense. It's a level playing field. Everybody is like similar. And when they're in school, they are thankfully out of their homes. They learn to disconnect and move on to a peer field where everything they want is at rest. They are in their uniforms, not in their uniforms, doesn't matter, but at least they are in their same age group. So there is a peer relationship, there is this teacher mentoring, there is no teacher enters into a class and starts by saying, cos theta, sin theta. Nobody begins that way. Neither do they on technology. But all said and done, there is this huge human touch and interaction, and the debate on tech versus touch will continue, I think, endlessly. But they were all doing a very good job.
Correct.
And what would happen is you could connect, you could see the responses coming from children. You could also gauge whether the child is physically present or mentally alert within the classroom. Make sure that the support system swings in and helps him either by a teacher's pat or a friendly tap, or sports in the field which liberates, or skill activities, or a little dance and music, all of that which would happen within that constrained time, travel by buses or by cars or walk it down, whichever way there was everything that was happening to call it a full day. Now what happens is children sitting alone or with their family support, hopefully, in their rooms and trying to go through every kind of subject, lesson, homework, classwork, whatever is happening, the kind of transaction that's taking place impacts, in my personal opinion, their cognitive domain. What it really sometimes misses on is perhaps their affective domains and their psychomotor domains. So,
Okay.
if that is true, it really worries me that something is not complete. I want to touch, I cannot. I want to see, but I don't see. I need to feel, but I don't feel, because I'm also expected to, in the nature of my delivery and transaction of a lesson, give, support my lecture, support my teaching, learning process with slides, with PowerPoint presentations, with videos, hopefully engaging them, but not responding to either their moods, or since our question is right now directed to what is the instability in the whole system, which is an emotional rift for the child. I'm saying all this, that
Correct.
somewhere we are missing out on the fact that we are not, we, in fact, I think barely 50% of the time we talk in class. The rest of the time is a lot of response. So the interactiveness which happens within the classroom is kind of lost out in transaction or one-sided dissemination, using the screen as a blackboard, or really not prepared to use the pedagogies that may be more impactful, which includes the emotional state.
Correct.
So right now, that amount of training has not reached every teacher. Also, it has not reached every level of student. It has also not reached, I think, the last child who probably doesn't have access to technology. So there are two things. One is that the right kind of transaction is still falling short of that which stabilizes the emotional aspect of a child. And second, we'll never have problem. Believe me, this country has the genetic code, the genetic wiring to respond to academics like this. I've never suspected it. We are absolutely smart with that. What has to happen is the complete nurturing of the human being to which a parent trusts his child to us and sends him to school. So
Correct.
this is where I feel that I think emotionally distressed children cannot express it, do not know where to go to express it. Parents are busy, they themselves are stressed. Sometimes children are absolutely alone. They don't even have a sibling in the house. If they have a sibling, there is stress for the technology, sharing of the technology tool. So all those value systems where sharing, caring, responsiveness, dealing with responsibility, able to raise a debate, fight it out, talk it out, let off their frustrations. There is neither any time nor any ability, because the teacher is going cut, finishing her work. I'm not saying that it is not a sensitive transaction. I'm not saying that the teachers don't understand what I'm saying. But by and large, because the time is limited, because the technology tool and resource is limited, because both the teacher as a family and the student as a family is going through all this, there is that connect is compromised. We have offloaded, we have given work, we have done everything. Have we really asked or thought about the child's readiness, the child's mood, the child's stress, if any, the child's loneliness? In spite of all the cacophony around, maybe the child is very lonely. And maybe depending upon the nature of the child's ability or the intelligence or the home situation, you know, it has come to an extent where I think there is enough statistics coming from NHRC and other places to say that there is a almost 100% increase in child abuse. There is a decrease in the ability. There is a gender discrimination. There is violence at home. Increased number of divorces that are in place. I mean, to what do we attribute all this? And is that therefore the right place for a child to be educated? All this, when the world is moving fast to what we can call it, the contrite, and think about homeschooling as one option which people have, but they are far and few between, and based on circumstances in which there is total readiness to respond to that. In this case, it was shocking. And when we hear of what amount of frustration some children, some teachers, some parents, nobody is at a convenient place. School is a leveler. It is a convenient place, the safest place, I think, even more than home, I presume. And we are not talking of privileged and convenient homes. There are all kinds of homes. And those homes don't happen on a normal thing, in the sense that, look, maybe there are pressures which we don't understand. Maybe there are complications. Maybe there are situations which we cannot help. But when the children come to school, it's a completely different stage. The stage is set for them. Everything is ready for them. They spend the good 6 to 8 hours of their time in school, and we are able to address their emotional distress. Do we want girl children not being educated? There is a dropout. I think all of us are aware that the newspaper is talking, and we are not talking, I think, as educators, we are not talking of just our schools, our education. Let's look at the entire scenario. And I think if I read the statistic right somewhere, less than 48% homes are now connected to technology or have access to any form of technology. And I know within the city of Delhi, children are borrowing, good apartment dwellers are borrowing cell phones and other things every alternate day to get into a lesson. So if you think everything is hunky-dory, they have the bandwidth, they have all the systems in place for them to sit cool, comfortable, like you and I are talking today, to understand, I think that's a myth we need, and that has to be shattered, because we need to come up to understand what is it. So how are our mental health workers helping us? And even for all of this, have we really thought that while we deliver our math lesson, our language lesson, can we really address their emotional front? Can we see that all of them are present? Do we know that their health status within the home speed of their grandparents, anybody, is fine? Do we know that they are financially secure? And do you know that even when all this is not right, when they are in school, they're not directly fighting these issues? I think, personally, I'm of the opinion, yes, work will be done. Slowly, people will come to terms with all this. But if we believe that we began with a bang, everything is hunky-dory, to know that there are millions, I think 3 million children still out of school. And there was this story which is now doing turns, and I think a lot of donations have come in of this young child who's, because his father was not okay or the family didn't have enough resources, has left school and started selling fruits. I think the story is doing the rounds. And now lots of NGOs, and I think has received financial support, and people have stepped in to say that he must continue with his studies. So, as educators, we don't have boundaries. And in what better way to know from other than when we are wedding technology to our system, that, this entire country, every home is a school today. Every parent a support teacher. Every stakeholder and interested person, and hopefully an interested person in their child's welfare. So I think this scenario that we are going through, and to believe that all of us have lovely homes where everything is happening, is really not true. And since we are not having the boundaries of the school, I think we can see the world better to know that things are not really all right. And even the same is true of teachers. Look at the emotional distress. So look at the amount of emotional distress transaction that's happening as well. You just come, After all your day's work, sit in front and begin to transact. I mean, that is almost robotic. To add to it, financial distress. There are so many complications in life. When we talk of it is in school, we address issues like depression, which can happen despite the best atmosphere, but we know it from children. We know how there can be sibling and class student rivalry. We know when children know that they are not able to learn because they are the speed, the scale in which things are happening does not include them, the lack of inclusivity, the understanding of diversity, as in different kinds of children with different learning abilities. All of that, I think today, if we look at whether we are addressing their effective domain, I have my doubts. And I know I've said nothing new. All are aware of it. Therefore, we need to now factor in how to solve it. So we do hear stories. I mean, Gaurav, please feel free to interrupt me when you want.
Yeah, surely.
But I'm saying, yeah. But I'm saying, for example, we take not shelter. We feel happy that a lot of our private good schools include things like for de-stressing, things like yoga, playing games, skipping, all of that counting, and a lot of sport activity and hands-on activity that needs to be done. All of that we are doing, and all of that we are doing, and there is something that happens, and we say to ourselves that we kind of content, we are happy with ourselves for doing the way we are doing work, but that's exactly not what it works. you know in fact, one of the teachers was telling me that, ma'am, I cannot, I'm just waiting to come back, only because I feel that despite my being very good with technology, I don't feel I'm talking to children. This is the story of the younger generation as well. Not all of them. Slowly, I only can say that including people like me have begun to handle technology well and begun to see what can I do to improve the pedagogies. Because right now, I can tell you without hesitation and without wanting to belittle anybody, that there are schools which have had phenomenal training. They've always used the content management systems or the learning management systems, have enough technology support, whether they are international schools or our own schools or state board schools, and they know how to use it to a limited extent. But it is really surprising. It is really, really surprising that there are many schools which have just learned it on the way right now. And in the process, the last man on board is trying his best to do. If they fail, the tendency to pass on the transaction, and people are, and let's also think of another thing. A child is not used to sitting facing a screen. As much as a teacher told me, I'm not an actor, I don't want to face the camera when I want to deliver with my mind. So there are these variations. It is stressing everybody. Of course, as a part of my second conversation on this today, I want to say, how can we improve to address this emotional distress as well?
Right.
Yeah.
So honestly, I didn't wanted to interject you, because primarily, I think whatever you were saying is something which is absolutely important, and we need to give it a patience hearing. Number one, may not be a very clear question in my head. It's a sketchy one, which is now, how do we, ma'am, really put this, say, a mental wellness? There's a lot of jargonized terms which are all floating around us, honestly. If we have to really bring in a practice, which is example, instead of just preaching, or our teachers are really eventually getting it implemented in a school, because for sure, while I look at this case, though I was obviously very, very disappointed, look at the age at which this gentleman has gone. Look at the beauty of his academic career. He had everything A on his report card, right? Financially now very, very sound, but look at where he falters. Now, and suddenly in one jiffy, he is away, for that matter. And I personally feel, which is why the entire discussion around mental health, or for that matter, given I'm father to two young daughters, this becomes so imperative. And I think not only it should become a center stage of our discussion, but because of this pandemic, if we see the beauty with this pandemic, I see is that it has a great, like a blank slate given to us now. Write this all over again the way you wish to, in the right fashion, possibly. Right. So I think one of the key component of that can be about. So my question to you is specific, ma'am. What are, say, key tenets of the socio-emotional aspect, which you possibly would have come across from multiple disciplines or multiple geographies, if I may say? Can our educators today start at least thinking about, so that by they open up their schools, the topmost or one of the priorities is actually mental well-being of their school?
So, it's a very interesting question because it has so many layers to it.
Correct.
Firstly, I want to begin by saying that while we do feel that we have the expertise to deal with all of this, because we have counselors in school, we have behavioral counselors in school, in a given normal schooling system, whomever we have, and we like to use them. So, I think the school must put in, and also not just all schools must have a proper behavioral, a whole counseling department, of which there has to be behavioral counselors, there has to be special educators, there have to be career guidance counselors, and all the word that we're using, counseling, is actually helping the mental well-being of children in all these areas where they have to live their schooling life as well as more living a good life. So they need to think about all this is in tandem. But when we say this, the school must have a program. There are beautiful programs and there are lots of complications. Children are in growing years of their lives, and they, at each stage, they have a different need. And whether we need to understand those needs, and either through our counselors, or also have a calendar in which not only in which our counselors interact with the children either on a daily basis, alternate basis, weekly basis, and through all other forms of medium of learning, whether it is music, dance, drama, yoga, anything, all of this which supports and understands, and also is a way in which they level themselves within the school, because all of these also add on to their mental well-being. So there have to be programs in place for children with the required staff to do it. This is one side. But like we always say, whether it is for teachers, for head of schools, for management, for everybody else, there are these experts available all across all across in our given setup. So we can call, and we should make it a practice that we call mental health experts, we call senior counselors, we call doctors from various hospitals, we call cyber experts today. And I think we have already seen that if children are sitting, how destructive sometimes they can get, and they inflict pain upon themselves. And we know all of that, not to list many that we know. So can we, this partnership with the society, because education happens in, I think, three areas: the ecosystem, the school ecosystem, the home ecosystem, and the outside, the social ecosystem, in which both of these ecosystems proliferate. I think we need to use the expertise available. It takes, as they say, a village to raise a child. So for raising children, we need to get all of these together, identify. It's not just very easy to say they have got into depression. We need to find out why they have got into depression. Can we have, depression is one overarching word for all that they could have gone through. The trauma of maybe single parenting at home, the trauma of losing parents at home, the trauma of poverty in the house, the trauma of, they're going through all this, and constantly they are rescheduling themselves to look normal. They're trying to do their best to look normal. And I think where mental health experts will very clearly tell you that at each age group, both with the changes that happen within themselves and the kind of circumstances or the ecosystem into which they interact, together it has impacted their lives. Sometimes the best of children fall back, sometimes the quietest of child gets ahead. So we really don't know what's brewing in their head. It is up to us to sometimes bring it out. And if we cannot handle it, hand it over to the next person. And I would really strongly recommend that I think each of our schools, every teacher, a counselor, and a supportive counseling department that actually views the physical development of children, the emotional development of children, the play processes that they have, the growing up issues that they have, and also relationship issues that they have. If we, all of this impacts their learning and their responses to life. So can we actually make a calendar in school, whether during these days or other days, to include all this, and during these times also be an agency actually for making sure that we have these conversations with parents as well. There are lots of things which heads of schools and teachers can have with parents, have a conversation, and make every parent. In fact, this is the best medium to have a parent-teacher meeting, completely uninterrupted, and so beautifully it can be done that one to one, and then discuss not just their work but also how they otherwise spend the time. Are they active? This is not time for just sitting and writing notes or finding things that can happen. This is also time when they can get into the kitchens, get into the, each part of our home is a learning center for our emotional well-being. Food is a great leveler. Play is a great leveler. Conversations with older people, the kind of, there'll be homes with, thankfully, homes with grandparents, which completely levels the mood building within the homes. I think, and the neighbors, friends, the communication quality, if we can look at all this and also respond, not react to various situations that are there, then I think, if you look at our cognitive profile today, the movement that has happened, and we say, we are moving from content mastery to competency mastery, right? And we are all moving into a constructive way of learning. I think the first constructive way and building competency is about our own well-being. For the teachers and schools, the well-being of the person should clearly precede any other kind of receiving that the child has come to do from school. I think it's first, rightly speaking, when a parent hands over his most beautiful possession to us, it is up to us to give it the life and nurture that we need to do. Some part of it is nature nurtured, some part of it will be through human interventions like us. Where we don't know, each school must have the guts, the capability, and the resource to reach out to the expert help around. And each time we know that sometimes the best emotional support comes from the sports field. The best of it comes from the dance field. So there is a lot of wanting to see themselves in different roles, which responds to their own reactions at times. I think I know of children who have only stood first in including their entrances. My own students in IIT, they have stood first, and in the first year, at the end of the first year, they collapsed in IIT. They were a whole year the whole year was set back. Why? Because they got so used to being first all the time that they didn't know how to deal with failures. So I think rise and fall, failure and success, and the ability to receive no's and don'ts for answers, all this should be properly knit into our home as well as school systems. And very clearly, I think I like a student of either psychology or counseling, I don't even think I can make a list of things which children suffer from. That will turn into a psychology class if I start saying, okay, this is a depressive response, this is an expressive response, lacking in dimension. I mean, I can go on to what sometimes the counseling department comes and shares with me as a head of school, that ma'am, this child is a parent in his home. The kind of dimensions, and we also have also learned it over the way as to what are the difficulties in which actual learning is happening with children. So, the whole thing is that this balance, learning will happen if rest of the systems support this learning. A plant will give its, will grow and grow well to be laden with fruits only if everything that mattered was available to it, at least optimally, if not maximally. That is my response to some of, I
No, no,
think, your
I
observations.
think because uh, we are taking up this question in particular in the context, ma'am, because obviously, we discussed it during the virtual time, conclave time, more importantly, and then what has happened, and more importantly, we know the sort of mental impact the entire what I call digital media is taking on, not just on the kid, but on the teachers and everyone. So largely, the ecosystem is little jaded, I would say, right now. It is any which way jaded for that matter.
Yes.
So, in fact, I will put this to the entire leaders who are present with us today, with that
Yeah.
while we will take this up as a Q&A, I would love to have some practices, or say example, how do you as a leader have been, if you've been addressing this from the beginning, wonderful. So we would like to hear from you. What else of a practices are you implementing in your school? Or if you intend to implement it, possibly then it's about what do you really intend to implement at your school level for that matter. Because I think,
So Gaurav, just to interrupt you for a
sure,
second.
sure, ma'am.
So, when we talk about some of the good practices,
Correct.
one of the thing is that, in the training of teachers, there is this, it is not just theoretically that we say that there is an effective domain. The effective domain of a teacher and the student both are important to the school management, and therefore they need to work it well.
Correct.
As a system within schools, it is very important for us at all age group, whether it is kindergarten, primary, secondary, senior secondary, at all levels, to pay attention to what is the counselor's role. And if the maths department is important, if the maths can have a lab, so can the counseling department have a lab. And
Exactly.
all health and mental practices are well visible to children. And we sometimes hide under the garb of various functions that take place and say, हम theater तो करते हैं, हम नुक्कड़ नाटक तो करते हैं, हम ड्राइंग तो करते हैं, आर्ट तो करते हैं. There is a, हम वो सब नहीं करते हैं because उसको हमने एक period or 2 periods, we have reduced it to that. We don't, those responses are not adequate. Do
Absolutely.
these responses tie up to our actual vision of the emotional health? So the school needs to have a vision for emotional health and mental health of students. The school needs to have a policy in place that this is how we will nurture, whether it is in the academics, whether it is inside classroom practices, outside classroom. Can we have a laundry list, literally, and then put a tick mark against it saying, yes, we are doing this on a monthly, weekly basis. And
Exactly.
then after the vision and the policy for mental health, we have programs which are well intertwined within the subjects. I can take an example and say that if I'm teaching, if I'm teaching William Blake's Tiger Tiger Burning Bright in a classroom, can I link it to save the forest movement and therefore save ourselves? And how saving a life becomes such an important, can we intertwine all this? So this requires a bit of training. And moving from here, lastly, I want to
I think, ma'am, we have lost her. Yeah, no,
can you hear me?
yeah, ma'am. You're back.
Okay, you can hear me. Right. So I'm saying that have a clear goal setting, have an emotional welfare or emotional mental health vision, policy, program intertwined in academic and non-academic activities, and put them together. This is the framework I would think is important for educators to pay attention to. What is the content of a framework is, I think, it's not possible to discuss in such a short time because manpower planning,
Absolutely.
laboratory, everything has to be thought through. Yeah.
No, I think I will restrict myself to this last question, and then possibly we'll open up the house for the Q&A because that's more important.
Yes.
You really rightly mentioned, ma'am, because I also mentioned there were a lot of my batchmates. For example, someone from your own school say, right, they were A graders throughout, and then suddenly when they go to an IIT after first year, they just
Yeah,
become crashing for that matter, right?
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
there are innumerable such example. I mean, we know all about the quota story for that matter. And anyway, I mean, this is all happening around us for that matter. There's
yes,
nothing new,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
obviously at the end of the day, and I was saying this to you as well and to the entire audience, that this is the time if we can rewrite this all over again, make a fresh start while we are coming back from the COVID, if I may say, setback. And this is the really right time wherein we can prioritize few things which can be, and mental health should be one of them. So thank you, Lata ma'am. I think this is where, because see, it is having that reflection, if I may say, about what the current conversations are going on. I could really ask you this one final question and then we can open up, which is that, ma'am, if we have to sum up these 70 days in terms of, obviously these are life-changing moment for many of us with respect to the way we are teaching, the way the entire world is looking at things for that matter. But if school fraternity has to take, say, 5 things back from this era of a COVID, for that matter, once we revive back, what will be those 5 things as per you, which possibly will be a guiding force for us that, guys, come tomorrow May, obviously there is a likelihood, but I hope that there's nothing of this magnitude hits us anytime soon. First of all, I mean, my fingers crossed. No one wants it, no one can really face it. But we cannot talk about the inevitable. Something of this nature can happen all over again, for that matter, possibly at a lesser frequency. But if we are going to come across, obviously, we will be far more equipped to handle it. But I think first things first, it would be, what do we take from here so that we are a better version of ourselves, if I may say, right? So if you can.
So I will limit myself to these 5 things.
Correct,
Maybe when
correct,
you put a number to it, it becomes
correct,
slightly easy.
correct, correct.
First thing is that I feel it'll be an 80-20 reversal. We'll go back. The new normal is never going to be exactly similar to what we have had in the past.
Okay,
So I can see that the first thing is that in spite of the challenges, the human resilience
correct.
will adapt and has adapted to
We'll need,
any kind of challenges that we have had. So
correct,
when we go back, we know that we are better skilled the use of technology to deal with issues.
correct,
Therefore, if I have to draw, for example, if I'm delivering a lesson in the classroom and I want to draw an emotional experience in order to address the emotional nature or anything else, I'm better prepared because I have a bag full of stories.
correct,
So the new narrative will be that my kind of transaction itself will be different. I will not go back 100% to what I did. I will be using technology and I will be using all my global understanding because I can draw from them in order to enrich my class, both in its emotional quotient and in its academic quotient. So that
correct,
will be the first change I will be able to draw. That means I'm more resourceful. In these 80 days, I become more resourceful.
correct,
The
correct.
second thing I would have learned is that I don't need to rush into things. It doesn't help. I will have to step back and watch. And when I step back and watch, I can see things clearly. And when I begin to address things clearly, I know that I will pay attention to the learning quality rather than just cover syllabus.
Correct.
And because I don't have the time through technology and respecting screen time, I have given more work to the children. I have also understood that children take responsibility for their learning. Therefore, the way in which I will expect them to work will also be a little more independent. Firstly, I have better resources now, digital or otherwise. Secondly, I begun to understand my child better, that the child can take more responsibility for learning because that is willy nilly the behavior expected of the child. And I have kind of either gate crashed into it or systematically helped them build those things. That how do you learn? Take responsibility for your own learning because there's no teacher in the class to interact with you in that sense.
Correct.
Thirdly, I have, because I've moved, the third thing that has actually helped me is that I have become a little more global from my local. So I'm able to draw resources from all over the world. I'm able to cite examples better, but so can the child. So the child has also opened up his perspective of understanding a little more about things, because he now knows that when he's searching for something, he has tremendous amount of resources which he would never do in a classroom. So while taking responsibility, he knows how to access resources that are way beyond a classroom setting. Fourth, he knows that he needs to be more disciplined. Why? Because start of a program means start, attendance within the program means attendance, and being there means being there. Therefore, I think a little more discipline should come in ideally, rather than say that my bandwidth is an issue and therefore my video is not working, because we can very easily figure that one out. So I want to say that more discipline has come in. Fifthly, I think, this is my personal opinion, that maybe they will also understand the value of what it is to be in a group, and how do they take responsibility for others. There'll be more empathy, there will be more sympathy, there will be more understanding. So their whole, it is my feeling that all children will rise better to the occasion in response, not just for what they have learned, but what they have to learn to live with. These will be the 5 changes I expect. And therefore, I also feel that if I fine tune myself to emerging technologies in terms of pedagogical shifts, for example, then my entire understanding of how I transact this lesson itself will be significantly different from the chalkboard or converting my screen into a smart board. I'm going to do things significantly different. I
No, no,
will never be able to teach
correct.
monument from 1.5 pages of a class of a textbook anymore. My whole vision has changed. I am a changed person, and that I think is important.
No, exactly. I think what you mentioned was that I personally feel, and I've seen this, no matter webinars have been a dime a dozen, but then people have now been far more collaborative, I would say. People have really opened up in terms of
Yes, really, all the skills.
yes, people
All
have.
the 21st century skills, Gaurav, are visible. Whether it is, knowing to state a problem and then sorting it out, and then looking at the communication quality, looking at the creative impulses, looking at the collaborative impulses, understanding that since you're not alone in this game, in order to win, you have to let others win and be with them and collaboratively find solutions. Sharing as an important value. All of this, I think, all the 21st century skills
Yes.
are being, it's possible to practice it. Yes.
No, absolutely. They were in fact displayed in action, and as you pointed out, that because of the humans' inevitable way of coming back at things, for that matter, we have really bounced back. And as I say, it's always about taking a positive out of whatever we have as a situation in our hand.
Absolutely.
I think without a
Absolutely.
doubt.
Can't be crying.
So I would now open up the house for Q&A, ma'am, with your permission. So what we
Sure.
will,
Sure.
that will be, in fact, one of the features that everyone now has a quick question to ask Lataji. And in fact, we can also put a perspective, which I told you, that if we can have a little idea of what you've been doing at your level, at your school, with respect to the mental health piece, if I may say, or if there is a great practice at your end which we possibly can learn from, I think then the
Okay.
entire audience will walk back enriched. That's the way
With
I see
something.
about this thing. Right?
Okay. So as I said, it was coming from my own practice. The mental health program, we have a proper plan. When we say we have a proper plan, we know what this department is doing exactly like a lab does. So even, as 1, 2, 3, we know that we have a period for a child every week in the classroom with a mental health expert, either internal or outer or external. And in a school of 2,000 children, we have close to 6 people in the counseling department, and they all have their respective areas of work. We have also seen age appropriately what are the guidance level. It has been mapped properly. And I want to tell you that it begins, for example, at each level. when parents come in and hand over their children, there's a parent orientation which the counseling department handles with internal as well as external resources. Then when the children move from primary school to class 6, again we have a parent orientation which is well over 2 days, and it is like a camp. We do it like a camp. So from morning till evening, there are all these practices where we say it is a stakeholder participation in the mental health well-being of children. So while the first one, when they came into kindergarten, was just an orientation, when they come into class 5, there is a full 2 days camp that we do for parents, teachers, and children together. And then there is also when they come into class 9, again there is an orientation, and this time the orientation involves getting people to talk to them about early adolescence, late adolescence, relationship issues. And then we showed both to the students as well as girls, boys separately and independently or together, and to the parents. There is a series of 8 films that we have put together, and we put that up and have a Q&A with the parents. There is this one scenario. So they are called the 8 scenario systems in school, where we have these 8 scenarios, and then people are asked to respond to it. So it is shown, and then there are these Q&As that go on with it.
Okay.
And there will be a mental health expert and a doctor and a psychologist together present, all 3 of them, and they are all empaneled before itself in school. So we have a complete backing. So and then when they come into class 12, the more interesting thing is on their graduation day, we have a family picture. This is something which has worked very well for us. On the graduation day, we have a family picture when the child was brought into the school and when the child is leaving the school.
That's a nice gesture, yes.
So, and then we talk, and their graduation day photographs has in the corner the baby image of the child with the young parents.
Correct.
So we have practiced all this and it has worked. No answer for emotional cases are complete and 100%. And I think it's very difficult for me to go into the detailing of what each of these camps have.
Absolutely, that's what I think we are now opening up, ma'am, the Q&A largely so that we get to hear from what the schools have been doing, and possibly they may have a little story to share and even have a question for you. Ramesh Bajaj, you have a question? Ramesh ji, unmute yourself and ask.
Sir, this is Rekha Bajaj from Panipat.
Rekha ji, boliye. Please.
Sir, I was doing a course on a CBSE site for experiential learning. How will the experiential learning help now, and how can we plan it?
From an emotional distress point of view, or just experiential learning?
Both way, ma'am.
Okay, so you know what, I'll take an example. Now, experiential learning it's a whole book in itself, right? That we need to do, because we have now moved on into competency-based learning and moving from content to competencies, and we're moving from just knowledge acquisition to knowledge construction. Therefore, in order to construct our own knowledge, we need to experience that learning. Therefore, in the plan itself, the whole lesson planning that we do, and since you're doing a course, you would bear with me that the whole approach is different. For example, it's almost flipped in its. If you're teaching, whether it's a small class with community helpers as one of the chapters, or it is a bigger class with a visit to a monument, or classes from farm to plate, or from fiber to textiles, I can take any of these examples across the classes. And if we are not able to take a geographical view, or a 360-degree view of the issue in question, we will land up teaching those 2 pages and 5 questions. The experiential learning that we talk about is such that if you experience that learning, and we are calling it learning strictly in quotes, there is nothing to forget. And if any question thereafter comes, it's a feedback and a diagnostic feedback into what you need to further explain rather than not. For example, I think, because we have technology today assisting us, and we let's say we are doing a chapter on farm to plate, right from the calorific value, and if I were to state it in the form of a statement and ask children to experience it and talk to us about, there is very little that we need. I wish we can say that in an experiential classroom, the teacher is speaking only 1/3 of the time. So therefore, we need not just the textbook, we need to collect material of all kinds, send it across to the children, ask them to come prepared with it, and then we form groups and then ask questions. If children can ask us more questions than we can ask them, I think we have almost succeeded in our experiential learning. Experiential learning by and large has a lot of steps saying what is the science in it, what is the art in it, what is the social science in it, what is the language in it. That is not particularly just the essence of experiential learning. Experiential learning have they moved from where they were to where they need to be in terms of understanding this whole process. So I think that's a long and short of it. But when you do a course, they break it up into how you state objectives, and how are the learning outcomes defined, and how the learning outcomes can be achieved through various activities which are resourceful, which will be questioned, which they will find out, and there's a lot of finding out to do, and the way to find out will also include questionnaires, will include interviews, will include conversations, will include denials, will include reading, will include finding out across various states, across countries. And that, I think, is the essence of finding out more. I think the best knowledge of how a basket is knit, which carries the fruits of the fruit seller, will come from one of the villages. It cannot come from our textbooks. And how ecologically it is fruitful, and how there's no wastage, and how it is sustainable. There are so many aspects that get covered. And the final presentation, to include all this in a collaborative way by a group, is the essence of experiential learning.
Ma'am, but nowadays, due to this COVID.
One more point, that when you do things collaboratively, you have learned to share, you have allowed the person who is very quiet to talk, you've formed the team, and the winning is depending on the team and not the individual. You have lowered the bar of fighting for ranks and increasing the success rate of the teams. All these are, I think, the emotional connects which will be useful in the coming world. Sorry.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am, during this COVID time,
yeah,
how can we go for
collaborative work? It's very interesting. I just concluded yesterday with my school teachers, for example, how do you go with collaborative work? For example, I think now all of you in CBSE have received a circular saying art integrated learning, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That document is a very beautiful document if it is done carefully. It is not about the Fulkari.
Yes.
It is not about the artwork in each state. It is how do you integrate that art. I mean, to me, a kolam that happens in the south of India, or an Alpana in Bengal, or a Rangoli in the north anywhere, can all be knitted to the culture of that place, which is speaking about the stories. Look at Madhubani, look at Worli.
Yes,
it is not just about that. They are telling stories of the cultures and big stories that happened in the past. And if I include that in the state, if I'm trying to understand a state, then when I include all this, the whole, for example, Punjab, and if I try understanding Fulkari over there, and if I try understanding the Sanja Chula there, look at the emotional satisfaction that women can get together and talk to each other. And talk about their woes, about their happiness, about their love stories, about their fights, about everything. And then how it brings about saying that, I'm not the only one. Everybody goes through all this. So that kind. Now, how do you report all this? It is reporting to say, because these are very young children, but neither are they too young not to understand, because they live in families. So how do we present these things? Now, that is where the program outline has to be followed. But what we need to understand as educators is the essence of doing so. I think that's the brief of it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Well.
So, Chitra Subramaniam, your question, you can unmute yourself. Chitra ji. Please go ahead.
Very good evening. First of all, thank you very much for IPN. IPN forum taught me a lot, and which I try my level best to implement in our school. And wish you a very, very, very belated happy birthday.
Thank you,
And
Chitra
sorry
ji.
I
Thank
couldn't.
you. No problem. No problem. Thank you.
Lata ma'am, you know me very well. I am Chitra Subramanian, wife of N. Subramanian Aisha Tractors. We have met couple of times in Punjab.
A small world. Okay, okay. Lovely. Lovely to see you. See, that's what technology does.
Yes. After, I think, 2000, I met you for the first time, ma'am.
Correct.
Acha. And one more, it's my humblest gratitude to Dr. Sunanda Grover, again IPN member, who conducted a happiness curriculum in our school. I'm telling you, it was amazing, and each and every teacher of mine spreads this happiness to each and every child. All credit again goes to Gaurav. Lata ma'am, this experiential learning was amazing, ma'am.
At which end this dog is barking?
It is my home only. I will put him out half a minute.
Oh God. I like that. I like her.
Actually, he feels after I come home back, I should not do anything other than touching him. That is it. If you allow,
where are you right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are you right now?
We are in Bhopal, ma'am, because Aisha had been taken over by Tafi Malika Srinivasan.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
So we are in Bhopal since 2002, ma'am. In between, I went to DPS Bahrain for a couple of years, worked there as headmistress and came back.
Wonderful. Tell me your question.
So, Gaurav, if you allow me, can you share some of the, this happiness and wellness, what we have been doing in our school, which may help other schools also?
Please. In fact, Dr. Sunanda Grover जो है मेरे ख्याल से हमारे साथ IPN में I know her very well, and having said this, कभी ऐसा मौका ही नहीं मिल रहा है अभी कि एक आध सेशन हम उनके साथ करें, but I am sure now I will make a note, एक सेशन करते हैं उनके साथ.
You must. It is really very nice. I see that my teacher enters the class in the happiest mood, so that what we have, we can give it to others, right?
Certainly.
Chitra, I think, sorry to say this, but in Delhi, the happiness curriculum which Sisodia ji ran through in detail, saying that this will be a very integral part of every school. I completely, I wish I can remove the word curriculum. Why should it be curriculum for that matter? I think it should be so integratedly knit into every subject, every aspect of school, that it should be a given. It can't be a period in which you teach. I think it has a change of behaviors in which we render our educational process. Yeah. It should be across the fields, across the classrooms, across people, and brought into the centrality of our work if we want success to be seen. I completely agree with you that the happiness is key to our entire being. I have a little problem with the word curriculum, but I'm fine with what is the end result.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine with it. Yeah. No
as you know, everything came all of a sudden. My teachers, I am heartfelt thanks to my team once again. Within no time, they were already geared up to go with the online teaching, etc. But we have made it a point. Every month, 1 week, we will only celebrate. It's like recharging for the children to come back on board, right? So 1 week, we celebrated all the CCA activities. And the best part was we gave it to our children only. We gave the whole and soul responsibility to our children. They conducted for the whole school 1 week CCA activities. And we conducted, generally every year we used to conduct this summer camp activity for a week in school. And this time also, as it is, we have planned in our planner almanac. But it could not happen, but we thought, why should COVID be a hindrance to this? So we conducted our summer camp activity also over this platform on the online classes.
Chitra, I want to say that, it's such a beautiful thing. I want to endorse what you're saying, because all the schools, including the one that I happen to now support, we have done all our special assemblies. We have had our Mother's Day celebration, Friendship Day. We have had every single calendared item through technology, with children making, constructing poems, singing and with their songs, dancing. I think everything can happen in technology, and we should not be scared of it. You're absolutely right. All the special assemblies took place, all the celebrations, even the contests. And in the context, there were, even the contests, simple things like stories that make me happy. So, inter-school events have happened. MUN is happening. What more can we talk of? This connectivity and the beauty of at all levels. Art contests and the collages and the kind of pouring that is happening from students is really, and teachers, is really heartwarming. And as a head of school, I can see the smile on your face.
True. Yes, ma'am.
Truly appreciate that. Yes.
As you said, we conducted this not Earth Day, ma'am. Earth Week we conducted. Whole week. And we concluded with such a big webinar and impromptu speech. The head of director of MP Tourism came for that webinar, and he blessed. He was the judge for that, ma'am. Whole week.
No, I'm sure the doctor.
Environment week.
No, I'm sure your Dr. Grover's happiness curriculum is working on you for sure. You look happy.
Sure, yes. Sure. And our school counselor conducted this mental health day. That was also very big hit. And for all the classes, we had counseling by school counselor. Plus, we have made it a point on every Sunday, at least 2 hours webinar by external, experts from outside. Like once we called that additional secretary of education, Kochar sir, Sudhir Kochar sir, we called, and safety and security. Just now I said, DG Pavan sir, commissioner, he came every week, and you might be knowing this ISKCON president of Gujarat, one of that Prabhuji. He came and conducted such a wonderful webinar, Does God Exist? It was amazing. We went live, almost around 1,000 participants were there. These all are open for our parents. And whenever we have, almost every fortnight we are having PTM, but in every PTM, like one of our parent only, who is depending upon their expertise, they give something like that, nutrition, talk on nutrition, talk on hygiene, etc. So we involve, as just now you said, collaboration. So we try and collaborate as many people as possible. And in fact, we started giving thanks to all these COVID warriors. Once a doctor addresses the whole school and things like that, And 1 week we conducted as Value Education Week. Whole school, we did not teach them. Say, for example, Monday we celebrated as Mindful Monday. Tuesday we celebrated as Trustworthy Tuesday. Wisdom Wednesday. In fact, ma'am was just now mentioning that we celebrated as Fearless Friday. For 3-4 classes, we taught that Tagos, where the mind is held without fear. For lower classes, we celebrated as, Fun Friday, depending on their, means classes. That 1 week was again amazing. But I must tell you, my school counselor, she acts as a class 1 child when she comes to class 1. When she goes to class 12, she acts like a psychology teacher. She contributed a lot. I should be very thankful to my whole team. Plus, my team, I have been sharing all the training from Diksha, from Nishtha. Every link I am sharing with them. Each and every teacher is attending this training and they are submitting the certificates to me. As many as they have attended and the certificate. Once they give me the certificate, once they attend the CBT program, etc., same teachers come back and they have started giving the same training to the whole staff. Like say for example, it was yesterday the crisis management. tomorrow it is going to be stress management. So when they come back, they themselves, they have learned now artificial intelligence I gave them. So now they have learned to make how to make the report, how to make the flyer, how to make the certificates, all those things they have learned, and it becomes experiential learning for teachers. They are now experiencing all of that. And I am introduced first in maths. Again, thanks to IPN, you conducted this in the beginning. I caught hold of Nita ma'am, and she gave a training to our teachers. And class 1 to 6 they have. Beyond that, they don't have. So 7 to 12, I have introduced Minds Pack. So every day our children are doing minimum 100 to 200 sums they are doing, logging in. And my teachers, again, now they have learned how to make certificates. So we keep on making certificate, and we keep promoting every PTM. I let these children talk to other children's parents though, so that they are motivated. And after seeing this day before incident, I will tell you, this suicide was a nightmare. Immediately, you won't believe, same night, I started searching for this NCRT, health and physical education. Again, ma'am, don't tell me their syllabus. Yes. So I have taken most of the topics, and I had a brainstorming session on Sunday with my team, and we have started from today morning 7:30 to 8:30. It is health and wellness program, 1 hour. Today it was the basic yoga. Tomorrow it is on chakras, the 7 chakras of our body. And this responsibility I have given it to my HODs. I have given them all the topics. I have given them the liberty to choose the topic. But yes, before presenting, they will share it with me. And this goes like this. First 10 minutes of the prayer, etc., that ice breaking, etc., 5 minutes. Then whatever is the topic for that day, 5 to 7 minutes a talk, along with the Sukshma Vyayam will be going on side by side. Children will be doing the Sukshma Vyayam, plus they will be listening to this talk. Then they do, depending upon the day, again I have designed the asanas, so they will do the asanas and then pranayams. In that we have covered as much as possible till June 30th. Today morning, I saw children waiting for this class at 7:15 itself. On the platform, it brought tears to my eyes. Literally, I am telling you. I thanked all my parents to wake them up early in the morning, because their classes start from 8:30. This class is 7:30 to 8:20. Children all were ready to attend class also and to attend this health and wellness program. It was a great success. Immediately after the class, I sent a big thanking note to all my parents. And you know, there were around 250 participants today morning. I'm 100% sure tomorrow it will be double. Because, you know, I got the feedback today saying each and every one of them enjoyed a lot. You know, and we can...
I think infectious energy.
Chitraji,
energy.
We should extend the COVID for this entire year. Right? So, right?
Yeah. I can learn a lot. I have become, you know, so much multi-talented. Now I can see 5 classes in front of me, these online classes.
Chitraji, a few more questions to be taken up. Allow me if you can, right? Because...
Please. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thanks a lot. Thank you, ma'am.
And I think you have made some very valid points, and not that... I think people will really have been noting down, so they will be also of relevance. So thank you very much. Ambika, your question? You can unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. Well, this is Ambika Vasudev, and India's first confidence coach. And I just want to remind you, Lata ma'am, we met at the Mumbai event, the Fortune 50 school event. And I got the opportunity to drop your bag when you were leaving for your cab, if you remember.
Much honored and much humble, sweetheart. Yes, your face is so familiar, and I can recall that. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for remembering me. And so it's actually a universal calling that today I am talking to you. And thank you, Gaurava, for this beautiful opportunity to connect with the education leaders. We all want, we all are here. This proves that we all aim at creating success in education. And I still remember that we were talking on disruption at that moment when we met in that Mumbai event. And you specifically asked me, what is that confidence coach? What does that mean? And I said, this is what I'm really passionate about, creating that shift in the mindset of children, making them more confident to dream big and realize it. So this is what I would like to share, that I've been working as a consultant with many schools in North India. And with this COVID, the boundaries, there are no boundaries. So I am now associated with a lot of schools in pan-India basis. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. In fact, I'm writing a book on it as well. It's already so 2 books are on the way, and I definitely am looking forward to you as one of the in the for the forward in one of them. And this is what I just want one thing I just want to share with, which is going to help everyone out here. There is a psychology which is the iceberg psychology, which I've been sharing, and it is working wonders with the children and with the schools and teachers as well. So somewhere there is a lot of action which has happened, and kudos to all the teachers and the education system, who have taken this ownership to make sure that the students do not get deprived of this right to education. But somewhere when we see that there is the desired results are not being created, I just want to I want all of you to just go a little deep down to understand that there is an iceberg psychology which is working. We always look at actions trying to create desired results, but we have to step a little back to see that it is the thoughts which create feelings, and the feelings that create that lead to actions, and that's what that actually create results. So this alignment of thoughts, feelings, and actions is what is I really want you to just throw some disruptive idea on this, because even I would get another add on to, and it's time to bounce forward, not bounce back, I would say. And I just want you to say
agree with you. A very short answer for this would be that thoughts, actions, and the entire connection that we see between what comes to our mind and how we respond to it. And sometimes it's collective. And today, I think the disruption part is that something can go wrong when it is with a team of children thinking the opposite way. The thought can be good, bad, or evil, whichever way we look at it. So the grooming component of it will be through these various activities in order to see that the thoughts coming are refined. And if you talk to experts and gurus and others, you will find that they will tell you that your thoughts are fashioned by the kind of food you eat, it's fashioned by the kind of activities you do, it's fashioned by the kind of prayers you have. So they will come up with a whole lot of things as to how these thoughts happen. And today for me, this connectivity happening digitally is also a very different thought, because something children or adults cannot touch and feel people is another very important. However, metaphorically, we are all connected. And connectivity, the word connect, strangely, is more used in terms now than when we did earlier. We say it's a connected world to technology. So I think, there is a very quick response in the disruption that we can see because of technology. So the time loss can be shortened. In fact, the time period of responses can be shortened if there is something wrong with the thinking. So that, I think, can be supported well. I am saying something a little complicated, which requires a lot of explanation, particularly after, we just had that boys' locker room issue. How we deal with it, these are all very integrated to our response systems. Somewhere the thinking happened, somewhere the use of technology, somewhere the abuse of technology, somewhere all these things also need to be understood. So between thought and action, singularly and collectively, we need to really, really watch very carefully and be that interventionist power that can change and spin around things in the happiness of children. That will be a short answer to this. Of course, there are layers of complications in this.
Pramodji, your question?
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah.
Audible.
Okay. Good evening, ma'am. First of all, thanks for using term teacher warrior, because I feel teachers are unsung heroes generally and in these testing times or unprecedented times in particular. Ma'am, the concept of collaborative learning is in vogue these days and much talked about, if not in the true sense of the word, at least in seminars or webinar. And and they say it is a rule of the sea to help another boat in distress. Since
Sure.
since the fulcrum of the whole discussion is on emotional distress, so my question is, ma'am, my question actually is born from here. Don't you think, ma'am, schools should also extend helping hands to one another to have any substantial policy, any program, any plan, rather
Absolutely.
than rather than playing in their own ground and in their own pitch, in their own way, and heading
Yeah.
nowhere?
Yeah. I agree with you. I think we have to step aside from competition to collaboration. The schools don't want to share what is good about themselves. I
True,
think it's
true.
high time today that we share good practices. Had that not been true today, there wouldn't have been a confederation of industries where the industry people get together to see, the lawyers get together, the all these chambers, except for teachers, where this collaborative field is limited, or schools where the collaborative field is limited and the competition shows up because it's also a commercial activity. I think we need to step back and say that now, more in these COVID times, it's a great lesson to know that we are not having any boundaries of our own schools. Can we share all the good practices? And it is for people like Gaurav to put all of us together so that we
True.
can talk about our good practices. I think the takeaways from each one's talking between thought and action, between different kinds of functions celebrated, between dedicating 5 minutes in each lesson to value education, to the happiness curriculum. I think there are a lot of takeaways in the kind of discussions we have had in the last 1 hour, and particularly in the last few minutes, where I think when people like you come up and say, let's share, I think we need to create that. Let's not compete. We are in the lives of children. How can a child's life in your school be less important to me than a child's life in my own school? Therefore, we need to share good practices. We need to get our sahodais or the hub centers more reflective on this. We need to also have engagement with students and teachers which are not in a competitive mode. Everything does not have to be competition. In fact, as a part of our emotional well-being, when children go to each other's school and contest for something, can teams win rather than individuals? Can we now make team winning more important? And can the teams be between schools and not off schools? I think those little disruptive instances must be taken into consideration. I had one event which is called the editorial conference. I'm just sharing an experience where probably, we got everyone to send from their respective schools a photographer, an editor, and a writer. And then we mixed up the teams. The photographer of your team was in my team, and the editor of my team was in some other team. And then we made the teams win or lose, in which schools didn't have a role to play, but the heterogeneous teams won or lost. And winning, I mean, I think the whole concept of that peak of winning must now be flattened, exactly like COVID. I think we need to see the
Yes.
flattening of all this the surges that we see, because today only teams can win. We see bank mergers because people are talking about the acquisition and mergers that are happening among banks. Let's look at the senior levels. Let us see how people are coming together to make the organizations. I think all those things are going to be important. And I think I heard the other day Narayan Murthy and our Tatas and others saying that they're actually trying to do away with the classification of people which says I stood first in class or what is your score, but focus on other activities and other characteristics of people that actually make them fit into their organization. And someone was asked, so give us your one failure story. And he said, no, sir, I've always been winning. I've never had a failure. And that person was not accepted into the organization. So I think how to deal with failures, how these are conversations that must come up between children, with children, for children, by experts, by themselves. And we need to create these little lovely conversation tables around the entire world, both in technology and otherwise. And people like all of you who are working in this field, every single principal, a great, great leveler for their respective schools.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And
हाँ पूछ लीजिए बोलिए
no, actually I just wanted to share one thing, like I felt the the kind of chord of excitement was struck in the very outset, because when you mentioned that you had been associated with the school at Parmanu, since I'm from Solan, and secondly you belong to army background, since I'm teaching in a Rashtriya Indian Military College, so I was more than excited to ask something or the other from you.
Sure, yeah, no, we're absolutely certain. I think our army grooming and discipline, the Air Force, I mean, the being a service child, the kind of, we grew up where we were very secular. Being secular was a part of our training, mental training as a child. We grew up in those atmospheres. So therefore, we know the value, and we also know the value of living with people who are outside of our states. We have never been with our state people. So we have become family to every other member, and everyone our family. The Rashtriyata is really built beautifully in us, and our geographical travel has exposed us to so many areas. I think children need to travel more to have a lot of value education. Children need to go on adventure sports to understand falls and failures. Children need to experience all this to say that life will never be fair and sun will always be hot.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And thank you, Gaurav sir. Once again, thank you very much and happy belated birthday.
Thank you, Dhanwad. Priya Sharma, your question, and this will be the final question. We have kept ma'am waiting for so long.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Gaurav, for the opportunity. I just wanted to add here, Gaurav, regarding the sharing bit that we were talking about. I think if you follow the CBSE norms very carefully, we have something known as hub of learning. And yes, and that actually talks about collaborative learning, a lot of sharing, and apparently I happen to be a lead school also there. I have 5 schools also who are in partnership with me, and it is very beautifully practiced, where we are actually practicing whatever academics, our mental and wellness programs with them. So I guess if we follow the CBSE norms very carefully, I think there's a lot of sharing does take place, and a lot of collaborative learning does take place there. And so that's what I just wanted to add on there. So I think all of us are part of this.
I always keep saying this. This is such a big space to be in. The more, the merrier. I would say there can be 100 IPN within this, and yet we will be left with a lot to be done for that matter. So I personally feel boards are doing at their respective capacity. Due respect to them, absolutely a wonderful job, but more to be done, if I may say. Right. So having said this, I have always believed in this one philosophy. It says to me that if you want to lead the change, you first should change yourself, first of all. In that case, so having said this, this has been one thing which is underlining factor for us. And I personally feel there are more efforts needed. And because we have such a massive country in our hand, I mean, understand what sort of a magnitude we are working on. I personally feel the entire government system in India, for that matter, the government schooling system in India, needs so much of hand-holding with the private sector, actually. The best ideal partnership will be a PPP model within the government and the private schooling system, for that matter. That could have been really envisaged, and these times can be the best time when we can start it, for that matter. We should not be working at the loggerheads, either or should not be the situation. It should be collaborative in true sense. Right. So let's just see.
Yeah, what Gaurav I would like to add here is, I think every school has been made a partner there. So the only thing which we could request everyone is to be actively participating and contributing.
I actually know about that.
Contributing.
Yes.
Because I have the best of schools with me also there, and we see they are not very active. They won't like to share their practices. They don't want to come for the meetings. So that is something which needs to be done. And of course, I'm also from a service background. So, we know how to work as teams. We know how to, be working together and doing hand-holding with each other. So that's something I think we all need to learn on.
No, thanks for bringing that out. That's an important point. I think so.
I'm from Gyan International. I'm from RAN International Gurugram, Lata ma'am. I'm from there. I've met you a
Oh,
couple of times. Yes, yes. I've met you a couple of times, a lot of seminars. Yes,
okay.
ma'am. And it's a great opportunity to hear you today.
Oh, lovely.
It's
Okay,
lovely meeting
since
you, ma'am.
since we are already at 5:35, so we are ahead of our schedule with respect to 5 minutes. So, but Lata ma'am, thank you very much. So very lovely to have you with us. And as I said, this is possibly one of the sessions of the many sessions we will host with you. So this is just a good start, if I may say, right? Thank you very much, ma'am. If you would like to share anything else, otherwise I would like to, with your due permission, I would like to call it a day for us. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gaurav. I think you're doing a great job putting people together.
Thank you.
And these are great conversations. You know, it's not someone who can give and someone who can receive.
Correct.
These are conversations, collaborations. We learn from each other. There is never one giver. It's only the number of years that someone spends. So you see a more number of. So you raise generations of students, and that's how we talk of number of years. But I
Correct.
think sometimes a very good practice, it can come from any corner of this country, and I think they enrich us. So this is opportunity for me to thank everybody who's in this meeting today, and every speaker who spoke today, who has left me with more learning than when I entered. So thank you, colleagues. Thank you, friends. I am richer as I leave this conversation. So thank you very much, Gaurav, and the entire team of participants. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Keep yourself safe and healthy. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. And I hope to see you soon, possibly. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.